Hello viewers, my name is Damilari. In this lesson, we'll be looking at the topic chemical industries. Chemical industries. This is one that uses chemistry, that means the knowledge of chemistry to make chemicals from other chemical substances. So it means the other chemical substances that have been gotten, we take them as raw materials, then we convert them to another chemical, which will be the product. And all of this is for our well-being. This is done by chemists and chemical engineers. So the chemists, they make use of chemicals. Also, chemical engineers, they explore chemicals. Now, there are different raw materials that are being used in the chemical industries. We have the natural ones. It means from the air, from petroleum, from natural gas, coal, limestone, sodium chloride, metallic oils, and sulfur, all of which are mined from the earth's crust except air. That means you mine them from underground, so they are all natural, and then we can produce our chemical products which will be sold or used in the chemical industry, apart from air which is in the atmosphere. So others, they are from underground, they are extracted, so they are now used for making chemical products. Now here we want to look at flow chart of chemical industries. So in an industry where they use product of air as raw materials, it means from the air alone. Remember, we have nitrogen, we have oxygen, and many other things, but we'll focus on the nitrogen and oxygen coming from the air. Now, looking at nitrogen, nitrogen can be used to produce ammonia. That's by Haber's process. So it means ammonia can now be used for another thing. Then oxygen also can be used for oxyacetylene flame. That's when you join oxygen with ethyne. So it can be used for oxyacetylene flame. That's for cutting iron, iron. Then, as I said, nitrogen for ammonia. The ammonia can be in form of a gas. So, and this ammonia, it has many usefulness. Like you can use it for washing soda. That's in solving process. So in solving process, ammonia is one of the materials used for preparing sodium carbonate in solving process. So that same ammonia can be used to produce fertilizer like ammonium sulfate. So it means the ammonia can be used for fertilizer. Then also that same ammonia can be used for ammonium chloride. That's our dry battery. Dry battery. So ammonium chloride for dry battery. Then also that same ammonia can be used to produce HNO3. From the end of the ammonia, we can get HNO3, just like the NH3 producing NH4Cl. So it means ammonia can also be used to produce HNO3 acid. Now, another thing is that since we have used the ammonia to produce HNO3, we can now use the HNO3 acid as an explosive. Remember, most times once you hear acid, so they are majorly for explosive. Then HNO3 acid can still be used for making plastic. So they can be used for making plastic and also some petrochemical products. So this HNO3 acids, like I said, for explosive. Remember, acids are very dangerous, so it means they can be used for explosive products. Now, also flow chart for petrochemical industries. It means after bringing out petrochemical products from the petroleum. So what can we use them for? Remember, petroleum alone, we can get petrol, kerosene, diesel, and so on. Now, for the petrochemicals, that means chemicals of petroleum, we have methane like CH4, we have ethane, we have ethyne, we have propane, and so on, benzene, phenol. All of these are petrochemicals. And what can we now produce from them? Remember, in the industry, we are converting one chemical to another chemical. So we can use it to produce fertilizer, solvents, that means liquid that we're using to dissolve other substances, rubber, synthetic rubber. Remember, as part of the organic compounds, rubber is the pharmaceutical, that means drugs, product, synthetic fibers talking about all this, maybe clothing materials. So we can use for synthetic fiber, aniline dye for dye, detergents, and soap. We have plastic, paints. So remember, even the plastic from ethyne that is one of our petrochemical products. So that's ethyne or ethane. We can turn it to PVC, polyvinyl chloride. So meaning it's part of the what product of petrochemicals. Now another thing is from coal. Coal is another thing that we can also still use to produce other chemicals from the destructive distillation of coal. You remember we have coal tar, coal gas, we have coke. From coal tar, we can still get all these organic compounds like benzene, toluene, naphthalene, so which can also be used to produce plastic, explosives, and dyes. So that is for the coal tar. Then coal gas, as a gas, you can get ammonia. Remember, ammonia is a gas also, so you can produce it. Then coke as a solid, so you can use it to produce water gas, producer gas. That's from the, if you remember the video of carbon. So coke, the coke can be used to produce water gas and producer gas. So then you can also produce hydrogen from that water gas. So that means if coke is used to produce water gas, then water gas will be used to produce hydrogen. That's by Bosch process. Then also from water gas, we can also still get ethane. And if we can get ethane from water gas, then we can now produce plastic from that PVC. So meaning that from different chemical substances or natural products, we can produce another chemical. Now, another one we'll be looking at is limestone. So looking at limestone, that's calcium trisulcarbonate 4. From this calcium trisulcarbonate 4, we can produce carbon dioxide and also calcium oxide. So this carbon dioxide, if you remember from the video of carbon dioxide, so remember that we use CO2 as one of the products or one of the materials needed for making sodium carbonate. Even from the name sodium carbonate, it makes carbon dioxide is there, which is a washing soda. So that CO2, when it is added to ammoniacal brine, that's in the Solvay tower, so it will help us to produce the washing soda, which is sodium carbonate. So this sodium carbonate that is now produced from the carbon dioxide can now be used for detergent. So detergent, that's in the industry. So the detergent, remember, since we call sodium carbonate washing soda, anything washing can be produced from it. So detergent is a washing material. Also from sodium carbonate, we can also produce glass. And why? Because glass alone is a product of sand, that's silicon oxide, 70% of it. Then calcium oxide also is part of it. Then sodium oxide. The sodium oxide will just help to reduce melting point while producing it, while the silicon oxide is about 70% of it. Then the other products that are still found there, so that one will make that's like calcium oxide, so it will help the glass to become to be resisting water, so and also to make it hard. So meaning that from sodium carbonate we can also make glass. Then from this limestone again, remember we can still get calcium oxide when we decompose limestone. So the calcium oxide is called quicklime. So this quicklime can be used as base in agriculture, that's in farming. So if in farming, if your soil is acidic, so just pour this lime, quicklime, calcium oxide, it will make it, it will neutralize it. Now that same lime, calcium oxide, when now add water, it becomes calcium hydroxide, that's lake lime. So this lake lime calcium hydroxide can still be used for another thing. When you add sand to calcium hydroxide, it gives you a mortar. Mortar is a paste of your cement, paste of cement, that's the mortar. That means when you add water with sand with the cement, it will give you mortar. So the paste of cement is produced when you take calcium oxide and sand, calcium hydroxide and sand. So then also this calcium hydroxide, which is your lake lime, if you add chlorine, it will give you bleaching powder. Remember that chlorine always bleach. So meaning that, and then the lime, so lime can be in form, you can have the powdery lime. So the powdery lime with this chlorine will give us bleaching powder. So calcium oxochloride or calcium oxochlorate with water in front of it. Then also from salt, that's sodium chloride. We can also get sodium chloride and use it for other chemicals. Looking at sodium chloride, you can get it from seawater, sodium chloride, or from rock salt. Now, what we now use the sodium chloride for? So if you dilute it, dilute solution of sodium chloride, it will ionize. So that's, you can get Cl from that sodium chloride, and oxygen can be produced as during electrolysis. So from this same sodium chloride again, when you melt it, as I said, you can get sodium and can get chlorine. Then in electrolysis of this sodium chloride, we can produce hydrogen gas, we can produce chlorine from the NaCl, we can produce NaOH from the Na. So the NaOH that is now gotten from NaCl, remember NaOH is a base which can always use, once we get base NaOH, the first thing that should come to your mind is soap, which means the NaOH gotten from NaCl can be used in the soap industry and also paper industry. There will be a bleaching, a washing. So that bleaching or washing, the NaOH will help for the paper industry and also fabric. This fabric industry, like those that make something like clothes, so the cloth material is a fabric substance, so sodium hydroxide can be used in that fabric industry. Then also still looking at sodium chloride as a brine. That means when sodium chloride is having water and is concentrated, we call it brine. So it means that chlorine is still part of it. That chlorine can still be used as textile, remember, for bleaching. So textile, that's clothes or paper industry for bleaching. Then the chlorine, once you can also use it to produce HCl, that's from direct combination with hydrogen, so HCl acid. Also for tetrachloromethane, which is one of our organic compounds or organic solvents. So this tetrachloromethane is just to take methane and add chlorine to it, so you get your tetrachloromethane. And that's from this one we can also produce plastic. Remember, plastic is polyvinyl chloride, PVC. So this polyvinyl chloride means many chloroethane. So from many chloroethane we can get plastic. Also insecticides can be produced from the chlorine. Remember, chlorine is always bleaching. So being a dangerous element, it means it can help to kill insects, so insecticide. Then also from different metallic ores, that means the ores that are extracted from underground, so we can also produce another chemical from it, like the ore of iron, which we call hematite, magnetite, iron pyrite. So when you roast them, adding coke and limestone, you can get iron. And that iron that is now gotten, you can use it for gates, for making gates. You cast it and then form an ornamental gate. That means a beautiful gate. Then from iron, we can produce steel. And once we produce steel from iron, we have different kinds of steel. Steel that we use for our cutleries, all the spoons and the like, spoon or stainless steel. Then also construction industries, we use the steel for constructing different buildings also. Then also drilling and cutting machinery, and all the motor vehicles, they use steel for their body, the tractors, machinery and so on. Now aluminium as another metallic ore, like bauxite, cryolite, they are aluminium ore. So this aluminium ore, once you purify them, you can get your aluminium through electrolysis. That aluminium you can now use as alloy. That means joining it with another metal, you get alloy, like duralumin for aeroplane. That same aluminium we can use for household utensils, like aluminium for maybe pot, for plate and the like. Then also for cable, we have a cable, aluminium cable, just like copper cable wire. So then also aluminium for our roofing sheets, we have aluminium roof. Then copper also is another one. Copper can also be gotten from copper or like copper pyrite. So its oxidation will produce copper. You roast it in limited air, so to produce your copper. And that copper can also form alloy like brass copper and zinc. So it means when you add copper and zinc, you get alloy so that you can last longer. That same copper, you can use it for wire, cable, and also our pipes. There's copper pipes and boilers. Then sulfur is another thing that we can also use to produce other chemical substances. You can get sulfur from iron pyrite or copper pyrite or gypsum. So this sulfur now, when you add oxygen to it, you get sulfur 4 oxide, and the sulfur 4 oxide can be used to produce acid, H2SO3 and H2SO4. Then if you are able to get H2SO4 from sulfur, that's, remember, every time you hear acid, so explosive is part of what acid forms. So it means H2SO4 acid can form explosives, can explode. That means it can bleach or destroy something. So that's from H2SO4. Then also synthetic fiber. Remember that synthetic fiber like clothing materials. So it means this H2SO4 forming using it for synthetic fiber like clothing materials. It means it's going to help to dehydrate certain things while making your fibers. So it will dehydrate, that is removing water from whatever you want to produce. Also, this same H2SO4 as a dehydrating agent can also still be used for paints, for dye, for fertilizers. So we mix it together to produce all of this. So then the other ones we can also get, we still have another chemicals that we can produce. So and this will lead to different types of chemical industry. So we continue this in the next class. Thanks for listening.